My dad yelled at me and said I wasn't important anymore. He didn't want me in our house ever again. My fan said John backed him up. I left home crying right after finishing high school. My name's Amy. Now I'm 36 years old and work as a farmer. It's been 18 years since I left home. I've spent more time living my own life than I did with my family, and that makes me feel emotional. We used to live in a city. My dad worked in an office and my mom stayed at home. We were a family of 4, including my older brother. My parents always favored my brother because he was the firstborn. He got better food and fancier presents. He'd brag about it and make me feel small. Sometimes I felt really lonely and wished for attention, but my parents never changed, so I stopped trying. The big change in my life happened during the summer of my second year in high school. My brother was busy studying for a tough college entrance exam, hoping to get into a really good university. His practice test scores were bad, so he was always stressed out and took it out on me whenever he could. My parents treated him like he was fragile, being super careful with him, while I got stuck with all the household chores. That left me no time to study, even though I was doing better in school than my brother. They wanted to bring my grades down to make him feel better. It didn't make any sense. Around that time, one of my teachers told me about a program where students could go experience life on a farm for a few days. We'd stay with a family who owned a farm, helped with harvesting vegetables, cooked together, and just lived like country folks for a bit. Despite my family troubles, I decided to join the program, but my dad said farming is only for people who can't get better jobs, and my mom laughed at me, saying, "Are you crazy? You want to do manual labor and get all dirty." But I didn't listen to them and used my own money to sign up. It was the first time I stood up to my parents, and it turned out to be a great decision for me. Despite really wanting love from my family, it was an amazing experience. Working outside in the fresh air of the countryside felt so good, and I finally felt the warmth of a real family. The oldest son in that family, John, was just a year older than me, the same age as my brother. But John was nothing like my brother. He was kind, strong, got along well with his parents, and treated me nicely too. John's parents were really gentle, and even though I was only there for 3 days, I cried a lot when it was time to leave. John's mom cried too, and she said, "You can come back anytime." I promised I would. They said they didn't use their phones much, so I started writing them letters regularly. Before long, John started writing back more often, and it turned into like a diary we shared, and we started dating. It was a pure, long-distance relationship without even a single kiss. After my brother didn't get into his first-choice university and ended up in a lower-ranked college, it was my turn to apply for college. But my parents wanted me to get a job instead of going to college. They said it was because girls didn't need education, but really, I think they didn't want me to go to a better college than my brother. Since my time on the farm, I dreamed of being a farmer. I could have become one without going to college, but John was in college, so I decided to go and study a new kind of farming. Even though my parents and brother tried to stop me, I worked hard every day towards my goal. But when I passed the entrance exam for university, my dad got really angry and said, "Are you a girl trying to go to a better college than your brother?" My mom said, "We don't have money to spend on you. Your brother needs it, so you should work and bring money home." My parents' hurtful words left me feeling alone and sad, and after a big fight, I decided to cut ties with them completely. John came to get me from home, and his parents, who were now my in-laws, helped pay for my college. I ended up going to college, and 4 years later I married John. I didn't speak to my parents or brother during college, but when my in-laws said we should at least tell them about the wedding, we went to my childhood home for the first time in 4 years. It was summer after graduation and a busy time for planting, so we couldn't visit earlier. We all had tanned faces from working outside, but my parents and brother made fun of us. My mom asked, "How old are you now? You must be poor to work outside and get so dark." I felt so embarrassed. "Please stop, Mom," I said quietly, but she didn't listen. My brother smirked and said, "Smart people like me make money with our brains. If you're stuck doing manual labor, it means you're not very smart." I felt sick, and my in-laws' smiles disappeared. My husband spoke up, saying, "We're proud to be farmers and we work hard." My dad laughed in a mean way and told me, "From now on, you're a stranger to us. You're marrying a farmer who works hard for a living. We're going to pretend you don't exist. Don't come to us for money. We don't want to see you anymore." At 18, I already felt like I didn't belong, so his words didn't surprise me, but it still hurt, especially with my in-laws and John looking at me with sympathy. I cried quietly on the way home, deciding to forget about my family. Time passed quickly, and 18 years went by. The hurt started to fade. I had 2 kids and a busy but happy life. I almost forgot about my parents and brother until a cousin told me my brother was getting married. We were close and kept in touch even after I got married. I once sent them rice from our farm, and they liked it, so we stayed in touch and talked on the phone once a month. My cousin mentioned we could catch up at the wedding. My cousin said, but I hadn't heard anything about the wedding from my parents or brother. Since we're not talking, I wouldn't know. I heard they're building a new house. I wonder if it's done. It seemed both my parents and brother planned to move after the wedding. My cousin knew about the problems between my parents and me, but they probably assumed I'd still show up at important family events. After the call with my cousin, I impulsively called my mom's cell phone, but all I got was a message saying, "This number is no longer in use." I tried calling my father next, but got the same automated message again. Did they change their numbers? I didn't have my brother's number, so I couldn't call him. With shaky hands, I dialed the landline for our family home, and someone picked up. "Hello, it was my brother. It's Amy. I heard you're getting married and moving." I started to congratulate him, but he interrupted me. "You don't need to do anything. You're a farmer, a stranger to me. Don't call me," he yelled before hanging up. I tried calling him back, but I was already blocked. It was so harsh. No matter how much he disliked me, we were still a family. It hurt to be rejected like that. Seeing how upset I was, my husband asked gently, "What's wrong? What happened?" I couldn't hold back my tears as I told him about the conversation. Both my husband and my in-laws were furious, as if it had happened to them. "Your home is here, Amy. Your family to us." My mother-in-law comforted me. Her words brought tears to my eyes. I wish she was my real mom. She cared about me more than my own mother did, I thought. My father-in-law also reassured me, saying, "You're happy now. That's what matters. Don't let it hurt you." My husband added, "Let's learn from their mistakes and make sure we're different." Even our kids, unaware of the situation, hugged me tightly. "Thank you, everyone," I said, feeling the warmth in my heart. I realized how happy I was even without the support of my biological family. But things changed dramatically when my business was featured on national TV. My in-laws were big grain farmers in the American Midwest. They grew lots of fruits and veggies, but some didn't meet standards. I studied food business in college and figured out how to sell the produce that wasn't perfect. I started an online business selling jams, juices, and sauces made from those fruits and veggies. With support from the local farmers union, my business became a hit. Moms loved our safe, homegrown food, and seniors enjoyed the homemade pickles. I hired young women who, like me, married into farming families, and unemployed young people. The business grew to $5 million. Our success story got covered on TV. After the TV show aired, we were bombarded with calls from all sorts of people. We got orders, questions, offers for deals, and requests for interviews. Both the company phone and my personal cell phone wouldn't stop ringing. So when I got a call from an unknown number, I answered without thinking. To my surprise, it was my brother. I figured he must have seen the TV feature and heard about my success. But without much of a hello, he said, "I'm thinking of starting a business. Can you lend me some money?" "Excuse me, absolutely not," I replied firmly, feeling even more resolute. I coldly rejected his request and hung up. But he called again. "Stop arguing and give me the money. If a woman like you can start a business and make money, I'm sure I can do it too," he shouted relentlessly. "That's not how someone asking for a loan should act," I responded, baffled by his confidence. It was ironic because he was the one who had called me a stranger, just a simple farmer. Ignoring his request, I asked something that had been bothering me, by the way, who decided not to tell me about the move. Obviously it was me, my wife. "She's a city girl, you know," he replied. "The moment I mentioned you, she suggested we cut ties. So that was the reason I didn't want to hear more, so I hung up and blocked his number." It seemed like my brother's wife, whom I'd never met, had a similar attitude to my brother and parents. Realizing that my brother had seen me on TV probably meant my parents had too. A few hours later, I received another call from an unknown number. But it turned out to be my father. "Why are you in charge? Did you take a man's job?" he demanded. Well, both John and my father-in-law are deeply involved in the farming business, so it's only natural. In fact, large-scale consolidation has become advantageous for somewhat larger farms. My father-in-law is the president of the local agricultural association, and John has incorporated his share as an in-law and is now the president of that corporation, I explained. Perhaps my explanation convinced him because then he asked, "Why haven't you been in touch?" Feeling stunned, I replied, "You're the one who disowned me. I'm ending this conversation now," and I hung up and blocked his number. A few minutes later, my mother called. "Why won't you lend money to your brother? You're making $500 million a year, aren't you? Send money home. We're your real family. Have you forgotten all we've done for you, raising you up? Give us at least $300 million or at least $250 million, my mother demanded aggressively. Even though the business earns $500 million, that's the total revenue after paying for expenses and employee salaries. I barely have anything left over. I exaggerated a bit, and my mother instantly shot back, "You're lying. That can't be true," feeling increasingly frustrated. I couldn't believe my mother's persistent demands for money. I wondered if she had any shame. "I'm not going to send you any money, whether I have it or not. We're strangers," I told her firmly before hanging up and blocking her number. I thought that would be the end of it, but I was mistaken. My parents, my brother, and his wife, whom I never met before, suddenly showed up uninvited at my in-laws' house. "Hey, Amy, guess what? I'm taking back the disownment," my father announced. I was shocked at their desperation for money. My mother-in-law couldn't believe what was happening. Even my father-in-law and her were clearly uncomfortable, glaring at my parents in silence. The employees around us had gathered, looking shocked at my parents. My brother seemed to realize he wasn't welcome either. We're the real family, connected by blood. We deserve a share of your earnings too," he insisted. The woman with him, presumably his wife, nodded along in agreement. I was livid. "No, that's not how it works. Even though we share blood, there's been no emotional connection. You treated me like a stranger and abandoned me," I said, feeling the old wounds of being rejected by my biological family reopening. Tears threatened to spill again. Just then, John came and stood by my side. "Amy is part of our family now. Even if you haven't claimed her, we're perfectly happy without you." "Please leave," he said firmly, defending me. The employees joined in, criticizing my parents together. "We're with Amy. How dare you?" they exclaimed in unison. As I thought, this is my true family. I felt a deep sense of happiness. But my brother's anger was growing. "Shut up. Shut up, you country bumpkins. You're all uneducated trash," he raged. But John calmly responded, "Actually, both my father and I are Ivy League graduates, and Amy graduated from a prestigious agricultural university, revealing our educational background." "What? With degrees from top universities, why are you farming?" my brother exclaimed in disbelief. Maybe for my brother, graduating from a lower-rank university was his only source of pride, and he likely didn't anticipate being outmatched in terms of education, I thought. Amy and John remained composed as he stated, "Farming is an honorable profession. We can apply what we've learned in college to it." I couldn't contain my laughter at the absurdity of it all. "Brother, you've been bested by John in every way," I chuckled, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. Realizing I had been too fearful of my brother and parents, I spoke up firmly. "Let me make this clear one last time. We are strangers now." Pausing briefly, I adopted a polite tone. "Therefore, I cannot lend or give money to strangers. Please leave. If you cause trouble or act violently, I will call the police and take legal action." I asserted our separation unequivocally. My in-laws and husband moved closer to me, ready to shield me from any harm my parents and brother might try to inflict. I was deeply touched, feeling genuinely cared for. The employees also joined in, shouting at my parents, "Get out of here. Go home." My parents, brother, and sister-in-law left with resentment in their eyes, unable to argue further and only able to retreat. Later, I learned that my cousin, brother, and parents tried to get rich quickly by starting a business with borrowed money instead of asking me. But their arrogance led to a major failure. Now they're on the brink of bankruptcy. But I've cut ties with them, and I have no intention of getting involved anymore. As for me, my work is thriving, and I'm surrounded by my true family, supportive in-laws, a loving husband, and wonderful children. I'll cherish each day, enjoying the happiness of life.
The scent of cinnamon and pine filled the air, wrapping the Parker household in a festive warmth, but the chill in my mother-in-law's voice cut through it like an icy wind. "Those foster kids aren't real family, Emily. I can't believe you're bringing them to our annual portrait session." I stood in her immaculate kitchen, fingers tightening around the pie dish I had spent the morning baking. Across from me, Sandra adjusted a gleaming ornament on her perfectly curated Christmas tree, as if she hadn't just dismissed the 3 children who had brought light back into my life. At 34, I never imagined I'd have to justify my place as a mother, especially not to a woman who had spent the last decade reminding me that I couldn't have real children of my own. "They have names, Sandra," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the fire simmering beneath my skin. "Lily is 7, Marcus is 10, and Jack is 13, and they are as much a part of this family as anyone else." Sandra turned, her manicured hands clasped primly in front of her designer sweater. "Oh, honey," she cooed, the condescension in her tone as sharp as ever. "I know you mean well, but these temporary arrangements aren't the same as real grandchildren. I can't get attached to children who might disappear in a few months." The irony of her words nearly made me laugh. If only she knew. If only she understood who these children truly were. But that revelation wasn't for tonight. Not yet. "They're not temporary," I said, setting the pie down on her pristine marble countertop. "I'm in the process of adopting them." The ornament in her hand slipped, shattering against the hardwood floor. "Adopting," she echoed, her voice rising an octave. "Without consulting the family? What about Robert's inheritance, his family name?" Right on cue, my husband walked in, arms full of carefully wrapped gifts. I'd asked him to leave the kids in the car until I had spoken to Sandra, and judging by her reaction, that had been the right call. "What's wrong with adoption, Mom?" Robert asked, setting the gifts beside my pie. "Emily's been fostering them for 8 months. They're amazing kids." Sandra's lips pressed into a thin line. "Amazing or not, they aren't Parkers." They don't share our blood, our history. What will people at the country club think? Robert's hand found mine, his grip warm and reassuring. He knew how much Sandra's words stung, how they reopened wounds we had spent years trying to heal. We have fought for a family, suffered through 3 miscarriages, and finally made peace with the idea that biology did not define love. And then, miraculously, we had found Lily, Marcus, and Jack. A family born not of blood, but of love. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone, they have more history with this family than you realize. I scrolled to the old newspaper clipping I had found while researching the children's past. A discovery that would shatter Sandra's carefully crafted reality. But before I could show her, she waved a dismissive hand. I don't need to hear their sob story, Emily. It doesn't change anything. The family portrait is for real Parkers. I won't have it turned into some charity project. Robert stepped forward, his voice firm. Mom, that's enough. The kids are coming to the portrait session. That's final. Then I'll reschedule with Patricia, Sandra snapped, referring to her favorite photographer. I won't have my Christmas cards ruined by what, Sandra? I interrupted, my patience finally snapping. By 3 incredible children who have endured more hardship than you could imagine, who have brought more love into this family in 8 months than your country club has in years. A thick silence filled the space between us, the only sound the distant melody of Christmas carols drifting from the living room. Sandra stared at me stunned. In 12 years of marriage I had never spoken to her like this. Robert exhaled. I think we should go home. We'll discuss the portrait session later. As we stepped outside, the cold air wrapped around me, but it couldn't quell the fire burning in my chest. In the car, the kids waited patiently, their laughter filling the space like the very warmth Sandra refused to let in. As I glanced back at the house, I saw Sandra standing at the window, watching us. I thought of the envelope tucked safely in my home office. The DNA test results proving that Lily, Marcus, and Jack weren't just any children. They were the grandchildren of Sandra's long-lost sister, the woman she never spoke about, the secret she had buried for decades. Tomorrow's portrait session would change everything. Robert squeezed my hand as he drove, his silent support grounding me. You okay? He asked softly. I exhaled, gazing at the kids in the backseat, their faces alight with excitement over what movie to watch that night. I will be, I said, a small smile tugging at my lips. Because family isn't about blood, it's about love. But in this case, it just so happened to be both. And Sandra Parker was about to learn that in the most unexpected way possible. The morning air was crisp, the kind that turned breath into clouds and painted the sky a sharp winter blue, perfect for family portraits. As I carefully braided Lily's dark curls, I couldn't help but notice how much she resembled the old photographs I found of Sandra's sister. Those same deep brown eyes, that same quiet, knowing smile. Do you think Grandma Sandra will like my dress? Lily twirled in her blue velvet dress, the fabric catching the light as she spun. It matched her brother's sweaters, a deliberate choice. The hope in her voice made my chest tighten. She's going to love it, sweetheart, I assured her, even as doubt curled in my stomach. Could Sandra truly be called Grandma yet? The DNA results in my purse suggested she could, but acceptance was something else entirely. Jack, standing in the doorway with his arms crossed, already looked uncomfortable in his neatly pressed clothes. She won't. She hates us, he muttered, his voice carrying the blunt certainty of a 13-year-old who had seen too much. She doesn't hate you? Robert said as he stepped up behind Jack, resting a steadying hand on his son's shoulder. She's just set in her ways, but she'll come around. His gaze met mine, the silent determination there mirroring my own. Today would change everything. When we arrived at the portrait studio, Sandra was already there, instructing Patricia, the photographer, with clipped precision. Her expression tightened as we entered, her eyes scanning our coordinated outfits before landing on the children. I see you brought everyone, she said, the smile on her lips not quite reaching her eyes. Of course we did, Mom, Robert replied evenly. We're all family here. Before I could stop him, Marcus, the quietest of the 3, stepped forward. Mrs. Parker, I have something to show you. He reached into his pocket and carefully unfolded a photograph. A faded image of his birth mother, Sandra's niece, taken just months before the accident that had left the children orphaned. Sandra's face paled as she stared at the picture. Her fingers trembled as she reached for it. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. "It was my mom's," Marcus said, holding his head high. "She told me it was taken at Pine Grove." I saw the name hit Sandra like a blow. Pine Grove. The family's summer home, the place she and her sister, Catherine, had spent childhood summers before their relationship fractured beyond repair. Sandra turned sharply toward me. "Emily," her voice was taut, controlled. "What is this about?" I exhaled, acutely aware of the photographer's assistant pretending not to eavesdrop. Maybe we should step outside for a moment. But Sandra didn't move. Her grip on the photograph tightened. "No, I want to know now." I reached into my purse, my fingers brushing against the neatly folded DNA test results. "These children," I said quietly, "are Catherine's grandchildren. Their mother, Sarah, was your niece." I discovered the connection while researching their background for the adoption. Silence settled over the studio, thick and heavy. Even the children, normally so restless, stood frozen. Sandra's lips parted, but no words came at first. Her gaze flickered over the kids, taking them in, truly seeing them for the first time. "Catherine," she murmured, and for the first time in 12 years, I saw unshed tears in my mother-in-law's eyes. I haven't spoken to her since. "Since she married someone you didn't approve of," I finished gently. "These are her grandchildren, Sandra. Your family, the family you said didn't belong in your portraits." Sandra sank into the nearest chair, still staring at the photograph. "Sarah," she whispered. "I never even knew she had children. After Catherine left." She trailed off, her eyes finally lifting to meet Lily's. "She has her eyes." "Yes," I said. "And Marcus has your mother's smile. Jack has the Parker height. Turns out Catherine married a distant cousin of Robert's father." Robert stepped forward then, his voice steady. "Mom, these kids aren't just a temporary arrangement. They're our family, in every possible way. By love, by choice, and yes, by blood." For the first time since we'd arrived, Sandra moved with purpose. She crossed the room slowly, stopping in front of Lily, who hesitated before peeking up at her. Sandra's breath hitched. "I've been so foolish," she said, her voice breaking. "So caught up in appearances that I couldn't see what was right in front of me." Lily, with the kind of forgiveness only children possess, reached out and took Sandra's hand. "It's okay, Grandma Sandra. Do you want to see my dress? Mommy helped me pick it for the pictures." And just like that, the ice began to thaw. Sandra pulled all 3 children into her arms, holding them tightly, tears slipping freely down her cheeks. Patricia, ever the professional, discreetly adjusted her camera, capturing this unexpected moment of reconciliation. What followed wasn't the stiff, perfectly posed session Sandra had likely envisioned. Instead, Patricia captured real moments. Sandra smoothing Lily's hair, laughing through her tears as Marcus showed her more family photos. Jack finally, relaxing enough to smile. As I watched Sandra transform before my eyes, I realized that sometimes family isn't just about history, it's about choices, about opening doors that once seemed closed forever. The real work of healing would take time. But as Sandra fussed over her children, straightening their collars, brushing away stray strands of hair, I knew we had taken the first step toward becoming the family we were always meant to be. The changes in Sandra over the next few months were remarkable to watch. The woman who once cared only about appearances and social status now spent her weekends helping Lily plant a butterfly garden, teaching Marcus to bake her secret family recipes, and attending every single one of Jack's soccer games. One Sunday afternoon, as I watched her showing the kids old family albums in our living room, she called me over. "Emily, look what I found," she said, pulling out a yellowed envelope. Inside was a letter from her sister Catherine, dated just months before the accident that claimed Sarah's life. "I never opened it," Sandra admitted, her voice thick with regret. "I was too proud, too stubborn. And now," she looked at the children, who were absorbed in photos of their grandmother as a young woman. "Now I'll never get to make things right with her." I sat beside her on the couch. "You're making things right with them," I said softly. "That counts for something." She nodded, carefully unfolding the letter. As she read, tears rolled down her cheeks. "She wanted to reconcile," she whispered. "She wrote about Sarah, about the kids. She wanted us to be a family again. And now we are," Robert said, joining us with a tray of hot chocolate. Another new tradition Sandra had started. Just not in the way anyone expected. The transformation wasn't just in Sandra's relationship with the kids. She'd become a different kind of mother-in-law to me too. Gone were the subtle jabs about my inability to have biological children, replaced by genuine appreciation for how I brought her family back together. One evening, as we prepared for another family dinner, now a weekly occurrence, Sandra pulled me aside. "I've been thinking," she said, nervously smoothing her skirt. "I'd like to set up a trust fund for the children's education. Not because they need to meet some social standard," she added quickly, "but because it's what Catherine would have wanted for her grandchildren." I hugged her, something that would have been unthinkable a few months ago. "She would have loved that," I said. "And she would have loved seeing you with them now." The adoption became final on a bright spring morning. Sandra sat in the front row of the courthouse, beaming with pride as the judge made it official. The kids were legally ours, though they'd been ours in heart since the day they arrived. "You know," Sandra said at the celebration lunch afterward, "I always thought family was about maintaining the Parker name, about keeping our bloodline pure and proper." She looked around the table at our beautifully blended family, Robert and me, the kids, even Patricia, the photographer who'd become a close friend. "But real family is this. It's love and forgiveness and second chances." Lily climbed into her lap, something that now seemed perfectly natural. "Tell us more about Grandma Catherine," she asked, a request that had become common at family gatherings. And Sandra did, sharing stories she'd kept locked away for decades. With each tale, the missing pieces of our family history fell into place, and the children learned of the grandmother they'd never met through the aunt who finally opened her heart to them. That summer, Sandra suggested reopening Pine Grove, the summer home she'd closed after her falling out with Catherine. "It's time to make new memories there," she said. "Happy ones." Watching the kids run through the same gardens where their grandmother had played, seeing Sandra teach them the same family traditions she'd once shared with Catherine, I realized we created something beautiful from the ashes of old pain. "You know," Sandra said one evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, "I spent so many years focused on what family should look like that I almost missed out on what it could be. Thank you, Emily, for not giving up on me." I squeezed her hand, remembering the tense Christmas gathering that had started it all. "Thank you for being brave enough to change." The sound of laughter drew our attention to the yard, where Robert was chasing the kids through the sprinkler, all of them soaked and happy. Sandra's perfect lawn was getting muddy. Her carefully tended flowers were slightly trampled, and she didn't seem to mind at all. "Catherine would have loved this," she said softly. "She always said I needed to loosen up, to see that life was meant to be lived, not just photographed and displayed." As if to prove her point, Lily ran up and pulled us both into the water fight, designer clothes and all. And there we were, the proper Sandra Parker, laughing and playing in the mud with her great nieces and nephew, finally understanding what real family meant. In the end, it wasn't about blood or status or perfectly posed portraits. It was about love, acceptance, and the courage to open our hearts to unexpected joy. Our family might not have come together in the traditional way, but it was real as the laughter echoing through the summer evening, as real as the love that had brought us all home. "You'll never prove it was me." Amanda's voice slithered through the speaker, laced with smug satisfaction. "Everyone knows you're just jealous because I'm the favorite daughter-in-law now. Good luck explaining this to the family." I stared at the loan documents spread across my desk, my pulse pounding against my ribs. $75,000. Taken out in my name. The signature, almost perfect, wasn't mine, but close enough to fool anyone who wasn't trained to spot forgeries. My name is Olivia Parker, and at 32, I had just discovered my sister-in-law had stolen my identity. "Amanda," I said, forcing my voice into a measured calm. Years of professional training clicked into place. Taking out a loan in someone else's name? That's identity theft, a federal crime. She laughed, sharp and mocking. "Oh please, no one's going to believe you. I've already told everyone you're making up lies because you're bitter. Even Mark thinks you're just being paranoid." Mark, my husband of 5 years, forever caught between keeping the peace and ignoring the obvious. Amanda had burrowed into our lives like a parasite after her divorce 6 months ago, hovering, snooping, feigning concern about our finances while rifling through our mail when she thought we weren't looking. "Besides," he added sweetly, "the money's gone. Spent. What are you going to do about it?" Amanda had no idea who she was dealing with. 15 years in digital forensics for major financial institutions meant I'd seen it all. Fraud, forgery, financial manipulation. I knew how these schemes played out. More importantly, I knew how to dismantle them. "Thanks for letting me know," I said smoothly, my thumb tapping the record button on my phone. "Anything else you'd like to confess?" "Oh, getting all formal now." "Fine. I took the loan because I deserve it more than you do. You're just a boring office worker. I'm trying to build something for myself. The family understands. They'll side with me, not you." I ended the call, exhaling slowly. Then I got to work. Opening my laptop, I accessed the secure system my team used to investigate financial fraud. The loan application had been submitted online. I meant your move. Every digital footprint, every IP address, every keystroke left a trail. I followed it. Within the hour, I had my evidence. The application had been submitted from Amanda's apartment. My stolen social security number, her own email as a secondary contact. Sloppy, textbook identity theft. My phone buzzed. "Mark." "Liv, Amanda just called me crying," he started, his voice tight with concern. "She says you're accusing her of something. You know she's been struggling since the divorce." "Mark," I cut in, steady but firm. "Come home. Now, there's something you need to see." "Can't this wait? She's really upset." "No, it can't. Your sister took out a $75,000 loan in my name. I have proof." Silence. Then finally, a hesitant, "I'll be home in 20 minutes." While I waited, I fortified my case. Loan records, deposit trails, email confirmations. I secured the call recording in multiple locations. There would be no wiggle room. Mark walked in looking pale. I met his gaze, then silently turned the laptop screen toward him. He scanned the documents. The color drained from his face. She really did this. "Because she thought she could get away with it," I said. "Because she thought I was just a boring office worker who wouldn't fight back." He sank into the chair, running a hand through his hair. "What are you going to do?" I pulled up the official fraud report, my finger hovering over the submit button. "My job. I've spent my career helping people recover from identity theft. I'm not about to become a victim of it." "She'll turn the family against us," he whispered. "She can try," I said, pressing the button. "But unlike Amanda, I know exactly what I'm doing." The wheels were in motion. By Monday morning, the bank's fraud team would have everything they needed. Amanda had underestimated me. Badly. One final message lit up my phone screen. "Hope you're not too upset about the loan. Maybe this will teach you to be more generous with family." I smiled, took a screenshot, and added it to my evidence file. Amanda had just made the worst mistake of her life, and she didn't even know it yet. Monday morning, I arrived at work earlier than usual. The sun barely touched the glass towers of downtown, and the air inside the fraud investigation department on the 23rd floor felt crisp with anticipation. Before I even settled into my chair, my phone buzzed violently. "Amanda. What did you do?" Her frantic text filled my screen. "The bank just called me about suspicious activity on the loan. Fix this now." I silenced my phone and pulled at the case file I'd submitted. Every piece of evidence was airtight: IP addresses, timestamps, email trails, even her own arrogant boasts. Within hours, the department confirmed what I already knew. Amanda was guilty. The bank had frozen the remaining loan funds in her account. A knock at my door. "Mrs. Parker?" My colleague James peered in. "The police investigator is here to discuss the identity theft case you reported." Detective Miller, a seasoned professional with sharp eyes and a sharper instinct, flipped through my report, nodding as she reached the attached recording. "This is one of the most clear-cut cases I've seen," she said, making notes. "Your sister-in-law wasn't exactly subtle, was she?" "She never thought she had to be," I replied. "She assumed I was just some office worker who wouldn't know how to fight back." My phone vibrated again. This time, messages from Mark's parents. "How dare you accuse Amanda of theft? She's family. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us." Mark needs to control his wife. Control me? Interesting choice of words. By the time I got home that evening, Mark sat in the dark living room, his face shadowed with exhaustion. "Amanda's been crying all day," he murmured. "She says she'll lose everything if you don't drop the case. Mom and Dad. They're furious." I sat beside him, took his hand. Mark, your sister committed fraud. She stole my identity, took out a massive loan, and laughed about it. What exactly do you expect me to do? Couldn't we just handle this privately? As a family? His voice was almost pleading. I let out a slow breath. Like when she borrowed your parents' credit cards, or when she accidentally opened accounts in your name. His expression told me he hadn't wanted to remember those. This is why she keeps doing it, because no one ever stops her. Before he could answer, the doorbell rang. I checked the security camera. Amanda. Her makeup was streaked, her face blotchy with tears. Please, she begged, looking directly into the camera. Just let me explain. I opened the door but didn't move aside. When she tried to push past me, I stood firm. The bank froze everything, she wailed. They're saying it's fraud. You have to tell them it was a mistake. A mistake? I tilted my head. Was it a mistake when you stole my identity? When you bragged that I'd never prove it was you? Her sobs stopped like a switch had flipped. Her face twisted into something uglier, something more familiar. You stuck-up bitch, she spat. You think you're so much better than everyone with your fancy job? Guess what? The family will never forgive you for this. You'll always be the outsider who tried to destroy their daughter. I pulled out my phone and pressed record. Is that a threat, Amanda? She blinked. Then, slowly, she noticed the security camera above us. Noticed my steady grip on the phone. Noticed, for the first time, that she wasn't in control. Her voice dropped. What exactly do you do at the bank? I smiled. I investigate financial fraud and identity theft, and I'm very, very good at it. So, Amanda, would you like to explain again how you got my social security number? The blood drained from her face. Behind me, Mark exhaled as if waking up from a long, heavy sleep. You've been playing us all along, Amanda whispered, acting like some boring pencil pusher when really I was just doing my job. I finished for her. Speaking of which, Detective Miller will be in touch soon. She'd love to hear your side of the story. Amanda stood frozen, speechless for the first time in her life. I shut the door, and for the first time in her life, she was alone with the consequences of her own actions. The aftermath of Amanda's identity theft swept through the family like a storm, tearing apart long-held illusions. Detective Miller moved swiftly, assembling an airtight case from my evidence. 3 days later, Amanda was arrested, and just like that, the carefully maintained facade of family unity crumbled. I was in my office, reviewing the final case report, when Mark's mother called. We found more loans, she admitted, her voice stripped of its usual confidence. In James's name. In ours. Amanda's been doing this for years. We never wanted to believe it. The investigation uncovered a pattern stretching back nearly a decade. Amanda had stolen almost $200,000 from family members, always spinning herself as the victim, always relying on their loyalty to shield her from consequences. Mark stood by me through the proceedings, seeing his sister clearly for the first time. One night, as we sat on the back porch, he exhaled a long, heavy breath. I enabled her, he admitted. We all did. Every time we covered for her, we made it easier for her to hurt someone else. Amanda took a plea deal, 5 years of probation, mandatory financial counseling, and a court-ordered repayment plan. But the family's response was what surprised me most. During a small, subdued family dinner, my father-in-law set down his fork and looked me in the eye. We owe you an apology, he said. When Amanda called you vindictive, we believed her, because it was easier than facing the truth. You didn't just protect yourself. You forced us to face something we should have confronted years ago. The table was quieter than usual. Amanda's empty chair was a stark reminder of all the years they'd ignored the signs, the times they'd made excuses. But there was also something new in the air, honesty. I found more evidence, my mother-in-law murmured, hands tightening around her coffee cup. Old bank statements, times when money went missing, when things didn't add up. We always convinced ourselves it was a mistake. We never wanted to see what was right in front of us. Under the table, Mark squeezed my hand. Small gestures of gratitude had become his way of showing me how much had changed. Our marriage, once defined by unspoken tensions, had strengthened. No more pretense, no more avoidance. Just truth. 3 months after Amanda's arrest, I found an envelope in the mail. The handwriting was familiar, but shakier than before. Dear Olivia, it began. I've spent a lot of time in counseling trying to understand why I did what I did. The easy answer is money. But the truth? I resented you. You built your success the right way while I was always looking for shortcuts. Telling myself you were boring and plain was easier than admitting I was jealous. I'm sorry, not just for stealing from you, but for every time I tried to tear you down to make myself feel bigger. I handed the letter to Mark, watching his face as he absorbed his sister's words. She's finally getting help, he murmured. Real help, not just excuses and cover-ups. The family began to heal slowly and deliberately. Weekly dinners resumed, but this time, conversations were more honest. My in-laws started therapy, learning to acknowledge their mistakes, to set boundaries, to rebuild trust piece by piece. A year later, I stood before an audience, accepting my promotion as head of the fraud investigation department. Looking out, I saw my family, Mark beaming, my in-laws watching with quiet pride. Even Amanda's absence no longer felt like a wound, but a marker of the past we had finally faced. Sometimes, I told the crowd, the hardest frauds to uncover are the ones hidden behind family loyalty. But true loyalty isn't about silence. It's about having the courage to stop someone you love from hurting themselves and others. After the ceremony, my mother-in-law hugged me tightly. You saved our family, she whispered, not by catching Amanda, but by showing us we needed to change. That evening, as Mark and I walked home through the city, he suddenly stopped. You know what Amanda told me yesterday, he said. She said that, in a weird way, you did her the biggest favor of her life. Getting caught, finally facing consequences, it's the first time she's had to really look at herself. I squeezed his hand. Sometimes, I said, the kindest thing you can do for someone is to stop protecting them from themselves. The city lights glowed around us, and for the first time in a long while, I felt at peace. The truth hadn't destroyed this family as Amanda had once threatened. It had made it stronger. Sophie, come here, girl. My mother-in-law, Diana's voice rang out across her backyard, sugary sweet as she beckoned her German shepherd. The moment the dog saw me standing by the patio door, her tail dropped and a low growl rumbled in her throat. Oh dear, Diana said with mock concern. Sophie must sense something off about you, Olivia. Dogs have excellent intuition, you know. I watched as she slipped Sophie another treat, just like she'd been doing for months every time the dog showed aggression toward me. My name is Olivia Chen, and for the past year, I've been watching my mother-in-law systematically train her once friendly German shepherd to see me as a threat. The irony? I'm a professional dog trainer with 15 years of experience. Maybe she's just hungry, I replied calmly, pretending not to notice Diana's smirk. Sophie's ears were pulled back, her posture tense, textbook-trained aggression behavior. This wasn't natural fear or protective instinct. This was carefully cultivated hostility. Well, you should probably stay away then, Diana said, patting Sophie's head. We wouldn't want any accidents. I caught the threat in her words, saw the gleam in her eyes. Ever since her son, Michael, and I got married 2 years ago, Diana had been trying to drive me away. The dog was just her latest weapon. What she didn't know was that I'd been documenting everything, every training session when she thought no one was watching, every treat given to reinforce aggressive behavior, every command whispered to Sophie when she thought I couldn't hear. The security cameras I'd installed around our house, with Michael's full knowledge and support, caught it all. Diana had no idea they existed, just like she had no idea that I spent my early mornings working with Sophie when she left for her daily tennis matches. I should head inside, I said, turning toward the house. Michael will be home soon. Yes, better safe than sorry, Diana called after me. Sophie gets so protective of her family. I closed the door behind me, letting out a long breath. Michael was actually working late tonight, something Diana knew well. She'd been making more surprise visits lately, always with Sophie in tow, always when she knew my husband wouldn't be home. Pulling out my phone, I texted Michael. Your mom's here again with Sophie. Same routine. His response was immediate. Got it all on camera? We need to be sure before we do anything. I smiled, thinking of the folder on my laptop labeled Project Sophie, 6 months of documented evidence, videos, vet reports confirming Sophie's dramatic behavioral changes, consultations with other trainers and animal behaviorists. Diana had chosen the wrong daughter-in-law to mess with. That evening, after Diana finally left, I sat at our kitchen island reviewing the latest footage. The cameras had caught her in the backyard an hour before I got home, practicing what she calls Sophie's special commands. My stomach turned as I watched her deliberately agitate the dog while showing her my photo. "Good girl," Diana's voice crackled through the speakers. "Remember who the bad one is. Remember who we need to protect Michael from." I thought about Sophie, the sweet-tempered dog I first met 2 years ago. She used to greet me with a wagging tail and excited kisses. Now she trembled with manufactured fear and aggression whenever I came near. What Diana was doing wasn't just cruel to me, it was abuse of an innocent animal. My phone buzzed with another text from Michael. "Mom just called, says Sophie sensed something dark about you again. Says we should be concerned." I typed back, "Time to move forward with the plan." 3 dots appeared, then, "Yes. I'll call Dr. Martinez tomorrow. Document everything one more week, then we act." Setting down my phone, I walked to the window. The security light illuminated our empty backyard, and I could hear Sophie barking in the distance at Diana's house next door. The sound was different now, stressed, anxious, nothing like her old happy bark. "Just one more week," I whispered, pressing my hand against the cool glass. Diana thought she was being clever, thought she was protecting her son from the woman who'd stolen him. She had no idea she was about to learn a harsh lesson about consequences. I pulled up the latest vet report on my laptop. Dr. Martinez had documented Sophie's increasing anxiety levels, the physical symptoms of stress, the behavioral changes consistent with negative reinforcement training. All of it pointed to the deliberate manipulation of the dog's natural temperament. Opening my Project Sophie folder, I added today's footage to the growing collection. One day soon, Diana would realize that in her attempt to use Sophie as a weapon against me, she'd given me everything I needed to prove exactly what kind of person she really was. And Sophie, she would finally get the help she needed to become herself again. I closed my laptop and headed upstairs to bed, leaving one security camera's light blinking steadily in the darkness. Just one more week of watching, waiting, and documenting. Then Diana would learn that sometimes the most dangerous person isn't the one you're trying to hurt. It's the one who knows exactly how to prove what you've done. A week passed, filled with more of Diana's surprise visits and Sophie's increasingly concerning behavior. Each incident was meticulously documented, each interaction captured from multiple angles. On Sunday evening, everything changed. I was in our backyard, reviewing security camera footage on my tablet, when I heard Diana's familiar voice from her side of the fence. "Sophie, look who's there. Get her, protect us." The German Shepherd launched herself at the fence, snarling and barking with a ferocity that made my heart ache. This wasn't the same dog who used to share my lunch breaks and curl up at my feet during movie nights. "She really doesn't like you, does she?" Diana appeared at the fence gate, pleasure evident in her voice. "Maybe she's trying to tell us something." Before I could respond, Sophie broke free from Diana's loose grip on her collar. The gate wasn't properly latched. Knowing Diana, this was intentional. The dog charged into our yard, teeth bared. But instead of running, I stood my ground and spoke firmly. "Sophie, higher." The German Shepherd skidded to a halt, her aggressive posture melting away instantly. Her ears perked up at the familiar command, one we practiced countless times during our early morning sessions. "Plats," I commanded gently. Sophie immediately dropped into a down position, her tail wagging slightly. Diana's face contorted with shock and rage. "What did you do to my dog?" I pulled out my phone and press record, capturing her reaction. "I didn't do anything to Sophie. I just helped her remember who she really is." "Sophie, come," Diana shouted. The dog looked at her but didn't move, clearly conflicted between her recent training and her natural temperament. "You see, Diana," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I've been working with Sophie every morning while you're at tennis. Not teaching her aggression or fear, but helping her overcome what you've done to her." "You had no right." Diana spat, her carefully maintained composure cracking. "Actually, I had every right. As a certified dog trainer, I'm obligated to report animal abuse, including deliberately training a dog to be aggressive." I pulled up the footage on my tablet and turned it toward her. The screen showed her in her backyard, deliberately agitating Sophie while showing her my photos, rewarding aggressive behavior, and giving commands designed to trigger hostility. "I have months of this," I continued. plus vet reports documenting Sophie's declining mental health, consultations with animal behaviorists, and testimony from other trainers who've reviewed the footage. Diana's face went pale. "You've been spying on me?" "No, I've been protecting myself and Sophie. Dr. Martinez is expecting us tomorrow morning. She's already reviewed everything and agrees that Sophie needs to be removed from your care." "You can't do this," Diana hissed. "Michael will never allow it." Actually, Michael's voice came from behind me as he stepped out of the house. "I'm the one who installed the security cameras. I've watched you try to turn our family dog into a weapon against my wife. It stops now." Sophie's tail started wagging faster at Michael's appearance. He'd been part of our early morning training sessions too, helping to reinforce positive behaviors and counteract his mother's influence. "You chose the wrong person to target, Mom," Michael continued. "Olivia isn't just my wife. She's one of the most respected dog trainers in the state. Did you really think she wouldn't notice what you were doing to Sophie, wouldn't know exactly how to document it?" Diana's composure crumbled completely. "I was protecting you. She's not good enough for you, she never was." "Sophie, calm," I called softly. The German Shepherd trotted over to me, pressing against my leg like she used to do before Diana's interference. I scratched behind her ears, feeling her relax under my touch. "The police and animal control have copies of everything," Michael said. "They'll be here tomorrow with Dr. Martinez. Sophie will be placed in a rehabilitation program, and you'll be charged with animal abuse." Diana stared at her son, then at me, then at Sophie, happily accepting treats from my hand. All her careful plans, all her manipulations had fallen apart because she had underestimated exactly who she was dealing with. Without another word, she turned and fled back to her house, leaving the gate swinging behind her. I knelt beside Sophie, checking her over carefully. Despite Diana's training, the sweet, gentle dog I first met was still in there. With time and proper rehabilitation, she would recover. "You did good," Michael said, joining us in the yard. "Both of you." I nodded, watching Sophie's tail wag as she looked between us. Tomorrow would bring charges and consequences, but for now, this was enough, seeing Sophie free from Diana's influence, knowing that the truth had finally come to light. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about protecting those who can't protect themselves. The following weeks brought dramatic changes for everyone involved. The morning after Diana's confrontation, Dr. Martinez arrived with animal control officers and the police. Diana barricaded herself in her house, refusing to answer the door until the officers made it clear they had a warrant. "This is ridiculous," she screamed as they led her out. "I was training my own dog. You can't arrest me for that." But they could, and they did. The evidence was overwhelming. Hours of video footage, detailed vet reports, and expert testimonies from multiple animal behaviorists. Diana had systematically abused Sophie, turning a beloved family pet into a weapon. In most states, that's a serious offense. I stood with Michael in our backyard, watching as Sophie was gently loaded into Dr. Martinez's vehicle. She would spend the next few months at a specialized rehabilitation center, recovering from the psychological damage Diana had inflicted. "She'll be okay," Dr. Martinez assured us. "Dogs are remarkably resilient, and Sophie has a strong foundation of positive training to fall back on, thanks to Olivia." News of Diana's arrest spread quickly through the neighborhood. Some neighbors came forward with their own stories. They had witnessed her training sessions, but hadn't known how to intervene. Others shared security camera footage of Diana deliberately agitating Sophie near their properties. "I can't believe she did this," Michael said one evening as we sat on our patio. "My own mother, deliberately trying to turn our dog into a threat." I squeezed his hand. "She never thought she'd get caught. People like that rarely do." The legal proceedings moved swiftly. Diana's actions were clearly documented, and her attempts to justify them only made things worse. "I was protecting my son," she declared in court. But the judge wasn't sympathetic. "Mrs. Harrison," he said sternly, "you deliberately abused an animal and created a potentially dangerous situation. Your misguided attempts to interfere with your son's marriage do not justify these actions." Diana was sentenced to probation, mandatory counseling, and a lifetime ban on pet ownership. She was also ordered to pay for Sophie's rehabilitation and ongoing care. But the real punishment, at least for her, was the damage to her reputation. Healing takes time, 3 months into Sophie's rehabilitation, we received wonderful news. Dr. Martinez called to say Sophie was ready for supervised visits. The moment we walked into the center, Sophie's tail started wagging. There was no fear, no aggression, just pure joy as she recognized us. She bounded over, covering us in kisses. She's made remarkable progress, Dr. Martinez said, smiling at the reunion. The negative training has been largely overwritten. She's back to her natural, gentle temperament. Watching Sophie play in the center's yard, chasing balls and interacting happily with other dogs, brought tears to my eyes. This was who she was meant to be, not a weapon, but a loving, trusting companion. After 2 more months of rehabilitation and supervised visits, Sophie was finally cleared to come home. The day we brought her back, she ran straight to her favorite spot on the couch, grabbed her old toy, and settled in like she'd never left. Deanna, meanwhile, had moved across the state to live with her sister. She still tried to contact Michael occasionally, always with the same justifications and excuses. He remained firm in his decision to maintain distance. She needs to understand there are consequences, he said. What she did to Sophie, what she tried to do to you, that's not love, that's control. Full circle, 1 year after everything happened, we received an unexpected letter from Diana's counselor. With Diana's permission, she shared that they had been working through the underlying issues that led to her behavior. Your mother is beginning to understand the harm she caused, the counselor wrote. She has a long way to go, but she's making progress. We decided to send a brief response through the counselor, including a recent photo of Sophie playing in our yard. Not to hurt Diana, but to show her what healing looks like. Today, Sophie is a certified therapy dog, working with children who have experienced trauma. The dog Diana tried to turn into a weapon now helps heal emotional wounds. Sometimes life has a way of coming full circle. As I watch Sophie gently napping in the sunlight, her paw twitching as she dreams, I think about how different things could have been. If we hadn't documented everything, if we hadn't been patient, if we hadn't put Sophie's well-being first. You know what they say, Michael often reminds me, karma has a way of working things out. But I prefer to think it's not about karma. It's about standing up to abuse, protecting the innocent, and having the patience to let the truth reveal itself. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's making sure that love wins in the end. Sophie lifts her head and wags her tail as I scratch behind her ears. In her eyes, I see no trace of the fear and aggression Diana tried to instill. Instead, I see trust, love, and the unshakable bond that comes from healing together. That's the real victory, not Diana's downfall, but Sophie's resurrection. And in the end, that's worth more than any revenge could ever be.